such as gypsies might wear. They always appeared pleased that you had brought them something, but on the way home you discovered you still had your presents, after all. The best guess as to the number in the tribe, somehow that seemed the best way to describe them, was 60, give or take a few. The general verdict was expressed by Henderson at the next club luncheon. They're odd, but they're hard workers. Darned good thing for the community. Miller, the jeweler, agreed vigorously. Self-interest, Jerry murmured. It is a wonderful thing. They turned on him. They haven't bought a thing from us. What if they did? Kidding, boys. I've got something to sell too. Then Jerry frowned. They haven't bought anything? Around the table heads shook. Probably, Carso growled. They wear their hair long, too. In the laughter, the matter was forgotten. But Jerry remembered it that night, sitting on the porch of his house. There must have been hundreds of items, tools and nails and hinges and glass and wire and sandpaper and oil and rope and seed and salt and sugar. That tribe needed. How could they... There was a step on the path. You there, Carcero called. Yup. The barber sat in the other chair, hoisted his feet to the railing. You know how kids are. That boy of mine, he couldn't stand about Dark Valley. He was out there with a couple of pals, poking around. Yes? Jerry didn't realize his voice was sharp. Oh, no trouble. But the middle fork of the river started to run again. For a long time after Carcero had gone, Jerry sat with his cold pipe in his mouth. There were reasonable explanations for every one of the small oddities that had cropped up with Joe Merkelos and his people, but he couldn't shake a growing feeling of uneasiness. Jerry went to bed muttering, for he was a man well trained to keep emotion and fact separate. But the feeling was still with him when he awoke, and he recognized it later on Henderson's face. We got to get the boys together and talk this thing over, the feed and fuel owner said. What's up? This stuff that's missing. Jerry gave a start. He had just spent at least half an hour looking for this garage lock. Every day this week, Henderson went on heavily, I've had people in to replace some little thing that was lost. Hatchets and feeding troughs and spare parts and panes of glass and things like that. A couple of the old chicken brooders that were stored. 10 salt blocks Anderson had in his barn. Just then McAllister stepped over from his drugstore to join them. Damn it, he said plaintively, dusting off his store jacket. I've been in the basement the last hour looking for an old pipe wrench. I swear I left it there. Jerry met Henderson's glance. All right, he said. Let's get the gang together for some lunch today. Sheriff Watson joined them in the back room of the restaurant. When the coffee came, Jerry rose to explain the purpose of the meeting. Our problem, he began, may amount to nothing at all, or it could turn out to be mighty nasty. Hen and I thought it was time to talk it over. Briefly, he recapitulated Dark Valley's reawakening. He described Joe Merkelos and his people, their odd clothing, their independence, their alien language. Point 1, he said. Most people don't like strangers. He described the tribe's arrival without cars or wagons, without even a mark on the abandoned road. He spoke of the pumps that came to life, the river that now ran again. Progress the tribe had made seemed almost beyond human capacity. Point 2, Jerry said. Most people don't like mysteries. He turned. Okay, Hen. First, Henderson explained that none of the tribe had bought supplies of any kind in West Bend. He got corroboration from other businessmen present. Then, as he summarized the missing articles, heads began to nod. Faces got red and lists were clenched. Jerry got to his feet again. Point 3. I don't need to spell out. Much more of this and carloads of men with guns will be heading for that ridge. There'll be the kind of trouble we don't want on Wide Bend's conscience. Should we let 'em rob us blind? Shouted Tipton. No wonder they do so good, Curcio cried. How about the water? Hammond asked sarcastically. You think they stole that too? Someone shouted back, and a heated discussion raged. Jerry finally banged on the table with a sugar bowl. Let's hear from the sheriff. Watson hoisted his big frame and sighed. Jerry's right, boys. We got a nasty situation building up. Right now, my old woman's so mad at the Dark Valley people she could spit. And why? Only because she can't figure 'em out. He brushed his mustache and looked at Tipton. Them people are human beings, aren't they? Tipton scowled, but nodded. Anything they done that couldn't be explained by natural causes, no matter how silly or complicated? Tipton thought about it, and had to shake his head. Believe me, boys, the only thing to get excited about is the stuff that's missing. If they're pinching it, we can catch 'em, and punish 'em. They may be foreigners, but they sure as hell have to obey the law of the land. Now, Hammond said, we're talking sense. Give me a list of what's missing, Watson added, and I'll go to Dark Valley this afternoon and take a look around the place. Everybody satisfied? Jerry asked. Everybody was. Sheriff Watson frowned at the list as Jerry drove into the first barnyard. They scattered chickens, ducks, and children, seen blurrily as they scrambled to hide. They remained a few minutes, then went on to the next farm, and the next. Beyond the last one, on the rise that led to the Carver cabin, Jerry stopped the car. They looked at one another. Watson rubbed his face irritably. I'm beat, Jerry. There's something here I can't get my hands nor my head onto. I know. The sheriff banged one hand against the crumpled list. That butter churn of Mulford's. By God, I saw it. Same brand, same color. Even had scratches around the base where that old cat had sharpened her claws. I know, Jerry said again, but it had a letter Z cut into it. Worn and weathered, so you'd swear it had been there for years and years. That spring-toothed Herald of Zimmerman's, except the one we saw had 12 teeth instead of 15, and even the man who made it couldn't find where it had been altered or tampered with. It had been the same with a score of other things, each one slightly changed, just different enough to make identification impossible to prove. Slowly, Jerry said, wood gets weathered, metal oxidizes, honest wear is unmistakable, and these all take time, which can't be faked. His implication hung in the air. If the things had been stolen, then altered to avoid identification, whoever did it had more than human ability. Magic? Watson wondered. There's no such thing. No, there absolutely ain't. They sat looking with troubled eyes out over Dark Valley, till Jerry said abruptly, I'm going on up to see the Carvers. Watson reached for the door handle. They don't have no use for me. I'll wait here. I got plenty to think about. Jerry nodded. The sheriff would be remembering the seeds already sprouting in the kitchen gardens, the leaves that had jumped out of the old fruit trees, the lambs and calves capering in pastures washed with the green of new grass. The road was smooth, its ditches cleared and deepened. Bright clothing napped on shiny new clotheslines. Those were on the list, but how can you identify a roll of wire? Cordwood was stacked in every yard. New shingles spotted the roofs. The windows held glass again. Fresh paint glistened on porches. In the fields, corn and oats and hay were shooting upward. Jerry found the Carvers waiting for him. 3 wrinkled old faces, tense. They didn't answer his greeting, just jerked their heads. They led him past the cabin, through open brush, and halted at a bare place. Slowly, Jerry sank to his knees. Except for its size, it could have been a sprayed-out cougar print, but it was 2 feet across and pressed more than an inch into the hard, dry soil. Finally, Ed Carver nudged Jerry. The gnarled finger pointed to a twig of wild lilac 8 feet off the ground. Caught on the twig were several coarse black hairs, 6 inches long. Jerry looked from them back to the Carvers, then down at the ground again. He didn't speak. What was there to say? As they started back toward the cabin, Ed Carver said harshly, We found that 2 nights ago. Jerry brooded for some distance. Then he said, Ned Ames has the best hunting dogs in the country. They looked at him disgustedly. Damn it, you have to do something. Come back to town with me. We'll get some boys together and hunt it down. They passed the cabin and reached the car. The Carver brothers looked out over Dark Valley and shook their heads. We've lived alone, Ed said. We'll fight alone. When Jerry told the sheriff about the giant spoor, Watson gave a snort. Those old coots got bats in their belly fries. But I saw the print. Watson dismissed such evidence with a wave of his hand. They made it up, probably. Forget it till you see the animal itself. You'll have time to believe it then. We got enough worry about already. Jerry couldn't forget it. but there was a kind of reassurance in such hearty skepticism.